The morning sun burned through the smog-thick air of downtown Chicago like molten copper, casting harsh shadows across the cracked asphalt. The city's heartbeat pounded in the form of honking horns, screeching brakes, and the rhythmic clatter of the elevated train overhead. Amidst this urban symphony, a 12-year-old girl stood at a busy intersection, her bare feet dancing to avoid the sharp fragments of broken glass that littered the sidewalk. Maria clutched a weathered cardboard box against her chest, its contents, colorful candies and lollipops, glinting in the unforgiving light. Her dress, once a cheerful shade of yellow, had faded to the color of old newspaper, its hem frayed from countless washings. Despite the harshness of her circumstances, her dark eyes sparkled with determination that belied her years. She approached, each car window with a smile that seemed too large for her small face, offering her sweet treasures to drivers who mostly looked through her as if she were made of air. Maria's world had been turned upside down 2 years ago when her mother, Elena Rodriguez, died of exhaustion after working 3 jobs to keep them afloat. Elena had been a teacher once, a passionate educator who believed every child deserved a chance to dream. But when the school district cut funding and teachers were laid off, she had taken whatever work she could find, cleaning offices at night, washing dishes in restaurant kitchens, selling flowers on street corners. Her teacher's heart never stopped beating, even as her body gave out. Now Maria carried on alone, living with her Aunt Carmen in a cramped apartment above a bodega. Every morning, she'd take her box of candies and venture into the unforgiving city streets, determined to survive through whatever scraps of kindness she could find. She'd learned to read people's faces, to spot the ones who might spare change or buy a piece of candy. Most days she earned enough for a meal. Good days meant she could help with rent. The traffic light turned red, and Maria approached a sleek, black Mercedes that had pulled up to the line. Through the tinted windows, she could see the vague outline of a man in a suit. She tapped gently on the passenger window, her practiced smile in place. But before the man could respond, a loud hiss erupted from beneath the car's hood. Steam began pouring out in angry white plumes. The driver's door swung open, and a well-dressed man stepped out, his face flushed with frustration. His charcoal suit was immaculate, his leather shoes polished to a mirror shine. A gold watch caught the sunlight on his wrist, probably worth more than Maria's aunt made in a year. Robert Sterling was having the worst day of his life. The billion-dollar merger he'd been working on for months was falling apart. His wife had filed for divorce that morning, and now his car, his prized Mercedes, was betraying him in the middle of Chicago traffic. At 45, he had everything money could buy, but felt emptier than ever. "Excuse me, sir," Maria said, approach without hesitation. "Your car's overheating." Robert turned, startled to find a small girl addressing him with such confidence. Her voice carried a slight Spanish accent, melodic despite the chaos around them. "You know about cars?" he asked, unable to hide his surprise. "My tío, my uncle, he had a garage before he got sick," she replied, setting down her box of candy and moving closer to the steaming vehicle. "Can you pop the hood? I think I know what's wrong." Something about her assured manner made him comply. As the hood lifted, more steam billowed out, but Maria didn't flinch. She pointed to a loose hose clamp, her small fingers tracing the problem, with practiced ease. "The radiator hose came loose," she explained. "You need water to cool it down and someone to tighten that clamp. I can get water from the store over there." Robert found himself nodding, mesmerized by this child's unexpected expertise. "How much do you charge for your consultation?" he asked, reaching for his wallet. "No charge," she smiled, "just helping." As Maria ran toward the corner store, her bare feet slapping against the hot pavement, Robert watched her thin frame weave through the crowd. She moved with purpose, her small box of candy bouncing in her arms. When she returned minutes later with a large bottle of water, she was breathing hard but still smiling. "Here," she panted, unscrewing the cap. "Let it cool for a moment first, then pour it slowly." As they waited, Robert noticed the pendant around her neck, a simple wooden leaf carved with intricate detail. Something about it tugged at his memory, but he couldn't place it. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maria Elena Rodriguez," she replied proudly. My mama named me after herself, Elena, but everyone calls me Maria. And your mother? He ventured, something stirring in his chest. She died 2 years ago, Maria said quietly, her fingers automatically reaching for the pendant. She was a teacher before, and before things got hard, she used to wear this necklace every day, said it reminded her that even when things die, new life can grow. Robert's world tilted. His hand moved involuntarily to his chest, where beneath his expensive shirt lay a scar from a childhood surgery, a surgery paid for by a teacher who believed in a forgotten boy. Miss Elena Rodriguez had taught 7th grade at Jefferson Middle School 30 years ago, when Robert was just Bobby Sterling, a scrawny kid whose father had abandoned the family and whose mother worked double shifts at a factory to keep food on the table. Miss Rodriguez had seen something in him that no one else had. She'd stayed after school to help with his homework, bought him clothes when his grew too small, and even paid for his emergency appendectomy when they didn't have insurance. The day he graduated 8th grade, she'd given him a wooden leaf pendant, just like the one around Maria's neck, telling him it represented resilience and new beginnings. "I have to go," Maria said suddenly, seeing the strange look on his face. She grabbed her box and turned to leave. "Wait," Robert called out, his voice cracking with emotion. But she was already running, her bare feet carrying her swiftly through, the crowd disappearing like a ghost into the urban maze. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. He paced his empty penthouse apartment, memories flooding back. Miss Elena Rodriguez had single-handedly changed his life's trajectory. After high school, he'd gone to business school, built a fortune, and lost track of the woman who'd made it all possible. Now her daughter was selling candy on the street, barefoot and alone. The next morning he drove back to the neighborhood where he'd encountered Maria. It wasn't hard to find her. She was at the same intersection, box in hand, offering sweets to indifferent commuters. But something had caught the attention of 2 older boys who were circling her like predators. "Come on, Nina," one sneered, reaching for her box. "Share some of that candy." "I need to sell these," Maria said firmly, backing away. "Please leave me alone." "What if we don't want?" "Tus," the other boy laughed, grabbing for the pendant around her neck. "This looks expensive." Robert's Mercedes screeched to a halt at the curb. He jumped out, his presence immediately changing the dynamic. The boys took one look at his imposing figure and expensive clothes and melted away into the crowd. "Are you okay?" he asked Maria, who was clutching her box protectively. She nodded, but he could see tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. she began. "Sterling. Robert Sterling," he said. "But I used to be Bobby, from Miss Rodriguez's class." Maria's eyes widened. "You knew my mama?" "She saved my life," he said simply. "Just like she raised you to help others. Can I take you home? I'd like to meet your family." Maria hesitated. Stories of dangerous strangers filled every corner of city life, but something in his eyes reminded her of the way her mother talked about her favorite students, with pride and genuine care. "I live with my tia Carmen," she said finally, "above Gonzales Market." The drive was short but revelatory. As they navigated the busy streets, Maria pointed out landmarks: the church where she and her mother used to pray, the park where Elena would read to her, the library where they'd spend afternoons when money was too tight for entertainment. Carmen Gonzalez was hanging laundry on the fire escape when they arrived. A woman in her 50s with tired eyes and calloused hands, she immediately positioned herself protectively in front of Maria when she saw the expensive car. "Maria Elena, who is this man?" she demanded in rapid Spanish. Robert spoke before Maria could answer. "Mrs. Gonzalez, my name is Robert Sterling. I was one of Elena's students many years ago. She changed my life." Carmen's expression softened slightly but remained cautious. "Elena mentioned some students over the years. What did she teach you?" "That every person has worth," Robert replied without hesitation. "That education is the greatest gift you can give someone. That sometimes you have to invest in another person's future because that's how you change the world." Something in his voice convinced her. She invited them upstairs to the small apartment, where Maria showed him pictures of her mother. Elena Rodriguez had aged gracefully, her smile still radiating the same warmth Robert remembered from his childhood. "She never forgot you kids," Carmen said, bringing them coffee. "Even when she lost her teaching job, even when she was working herself to death, she'd talk about the students who made it all worthwhile." Robert felt his throat tighten. "I tried to find her, after college, after business school, when I started making money, but she'd moved and She moved here to take care of her sister, my late husband and I," Carmen explained. "When Maria was born, we all helped raise her. After Elena died, she became my responsibility." "And you've done wonderfully," Robert said, watching Maria organize her candy with careful attention. "But I'd like to help, if you'll let me." Carmen's expression grew skeptical. "We've heard promises before." Robert reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather portfolio. Inside were photographs, letters, report cards, a collection of memories he'd kept from his time with Miss Rodriguez. He showed them the wooden pendant she'd given him, now worn smooth from years of being carried in his pocket. "Your sister believed in me when no one else did," he said quietly. "She paid for my surgery, bought me clothes, stayed after school to help me with algebra. I wouldn't be who I am today without her." Carmen examined the documents, her eyes growing wide. Maria peered over her shoulder, seeing her mother's handwriting on old report cards and notes of encouragement. "What kind of help are you talking about?" Carmen asked carefully. "School for Maria. A proper school where she can thrive. Maybe a better place to live. Nothing too fancy, just safe and comfortable. And—" he paused. "I'd like to help Maria develop her gift for fixing things. Your sister had a gift for teaching, and Maria clearly inherited her mother's ability to understand and help others." Maria had been quiet during this conversation, but now she spoke up. "I do like fixing things. Mama used to say I had magic. Hands." "Your mama was right," Robert smiled. "Would you like to learn more about how things work? Maybe go to a school with a good science program?" The possibilities seemed to sparkle in Maria's eyes, but then dimmed. "I can't leave Tia Carmen. And who would buy my candy?" Carmen laughed for the first time since they'd met. "Mija, if this man is serious, and he seems to be, then you won't need to sell candy anymore." Over the following weeks, Robert became a regular presence in their lives. True to his word, he enrolled Maria in St. Catherine's Academy, a private school with an excellent science program. He also rented them a small house in a better neighborhood, not a mansion, but a place with a yard where Maria could play safely. But Robert's generosity went beyond material things. He spent time with Maria, sharing stories about her mother and helping with homework. He arranged for her to visit his company's research and development department, where she watched engineers solve problems and design new products. Maria thrived in her new environment, but she never forgot where she came from. Every Saturday, she'd return to the old neighborhood to visit friends and help at the local community center, teaching younger children basic problem-solving skills. She kept her mother's pendant, but also carried on Elena's legacy of investment in others. Months passed, and Robert found himself looking forward to their weekly visits more than any business meeting. Maria's enthusiasm reminded him of why he'd started his first company, not just to make money, but to solve problems and help people. Inspired by her example, he created a scholarship fund in Elena Rodriguez's name, providing educational opportunities for underprivileged children. One evening, as they sat on the porch of Maria's new home, she asked him something that had been bothering her. "Mr. Bobby," she said, using the name she'd started calling him, "why didn't you try harder to find Mama before she died?" The question hit him like a physical blow. He'd asked himself the same thing countless times. "I was afraid," he admitted, "afraid that I'd find out she hadn't remembered me, or that she'd be disappointed in who I'd become. I put business first, and I lost sight of what really mattered." "She remembered you," Maria said softly. "She kept a box of things from her teaching days. There was a photo of you at 8th grade graduation. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over Chicago's skyline. The city that had once seemed so harsh and unforgiving now felt full of possibility." "You know what I've learned?" Robert said finally. Sometimes life gives you a second chance to pay forward a debt you can never truly repay. Your mother gave me everything when I was your age. Now I get to give something back through you." Maria smiled, her hand moving unconsciously to the wooden pendant. "Mama used to say that love grows when you give it away." That night, Robert made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He called his lawyer the next morning and started the formal process of becoming Maria's legal guardian, with Carmen's blessing. It wasn't about replacing her mother or taking her away from her roots. It was about ensuring she had every opportunity Eleanor would have wanted for her daughter. Years later, when Maria stood at the podium to deliver the valedictorian speech at St. Catherine's Academy, she wore her mother's pendant and spoke about the power of second chances and paying forward the gifts we receive. In the audience, Robert wiped away tears as Carmen beamed with pride. But perhaps the most significant moment came when Maria announced her plans to use her full scholarship to MIT to study education and engineering, a combination that would allow her to teach while innovating. She wanted to create educational technologies that would help underprivileged students access quality learning just as her mother had dreamed. "My mother taught me that every child deserves a chance to dream," she said, her voice carrying across the auditorium. "And sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected teachers." As the years passed, Maria's impact grew. She developed learning software that helped thousands of students master difficult concepts, founded after-school programs in underserved communities, and eventually opened her own school, the Elena Rodriguez Institute for Innovation and Learning. Robert, now in his 60s, served on the school's board and continued mentoring students. He often told people that his most successful business venture wasn't any company he'd built, but the investment Elena Rodriguez had made in a forgotten boy all those years ago. The wooden pendant passed down through generations, a tangible symbol of how one teacher's belief in her students could create ripples that spread far beyond a single classroom. Maria eventually gave it to her own daughter, along with the story of the barefoot girl who helped a stranger fix his car and discovered that sometimes the most broken things in life can be mended by the simplest acts of kindness. Have you ever encountered or known someone who experienced such a life-changing moment through an unexpected act of kindness? Share your story in the comments below. And on quiet evenings, when the Chicago wind carried the scent of possibility through the city streets, Maria would stand at her office window overlooking the same intersection where she'd once sold candy. Barefoot, she'd touch her mother's pendant and whisper a thank you to the teacher who had planted seeds of hope in a young man's heart, never knowing that decades later those seeds would bloom into a garden that would nourish her own daughter's future. The cycle of giving and receiving, of mentorship and growth continued, proof that in a world often focused on taking, the greatest rewards come from those who choose to give. Elena Rodriguez had understood this truth deeply, and through her daughter and her former student, her legacy lived on, touching lives she'd never met and creating opportunities she'd never imagined. Sometimes, the most profound changes begin with the smallest gestures: a teacher who believes in a forgotten student, a girl who helps a stranger fix his car, a successful man who remembers to pay forward a decades-old debt. These moments, strung together like lights on a dark street, illuminate the path toward a more compassionate world. In the end, Maria learned that her mother's greatest lesson wasn't written in any textbook or homework assignment. It was woven into the fabric of daily life. That every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, and the kindness you show today might not return to you for decades, but when it does, it can change everything. The story of Elena, Maria, and Robert became one of Chicago's quiet legends, shared in classrooms and boardrooms alike. It served as a reminder that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or possessions, but in the lives we touch and the hope we instill in others. And somewhere in the city on any given morning, there's still a teacher staying late to help a struggling student, a child offering to share their lunch with a classmate, or a stranger stopping to help someone in need, continuing the eternal cycle of compassion that makes the world a little brighter, one small act at a time. The barefoot girl with the box of candy, had grown into a woman who could fix far more than radiator hoses. She could repair dreams, mend broken spirits, and engineer futures that seemed impossible. And every time she helped someone else find their path, she honored the memory of the teacher who had shown her that education isn't just about transferring knowledge, it's about transferring hope. In the end, that's what Elena Rodriguez had truly taught, that the greatest lessons are lived, not just learned, and that the most important subject any teacher can offer is believing in the unlimited potential of every single student. That belief, passed from teacher to student to the next generation, creates an unbreakable chain of transformation that can heal a broken world, one relationship at a time. Congratulations. Type 7 in the comments, so I know you stayed with me until the end. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in one of the stories on your screen.